Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, the show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just its pilot episode, and ignore any information we may have about the future of the show and focus strictly on that first episode alone. This week we're going to be talking about The League. The League went 84 episodes over 7 seasons, originally airing on FX and then moving to FXX later on. We're going to be talking about episode 1 today, which was called The Draft, which originally aired October 29th, 2009. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me as always, the guys, Joe, Ferg, Gordo, and Nick. How's it going, guys?
Heyo.
Hello.
Hi, Mom. It's me, Ernesto. It's my favorite part of the entire episode is just Ruxin railing on that dude for being a terrible criminal. It's
great. It's great. And we'll get to that shortly enough. But to start things off as we do, The League. Has anybody not seen The League going in? Anyone have anything they want to say right up front about it? Gordo, you have not watched it?
I have not watched it at all.
We were due for one of these. You had a nice solid month or so run where you actually saw the shows.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. No, but I didn't. I never saw this. No.
For me, I knew it was on. I had an idea of what it was, and I thought it was a show about football, and I'm just not a football fan. So I just not pay attention to it. And my old roommate, Adam, who you guys all know, he finally convinced Kelsey and I one day. He was like, look, it's not really about football. I was like, okay, we'll give it a shot. And we watched it. Maybe it was the second season. I thought we just became obsessed with it and just watched everyone. This is one of those shows where when the new season would come out on DVD, I would buy it so we could just watch it over and over again. And to that point, I just want to say Adam and his wife Damaris listen to every single episode of ours. So thank you.
Well, hello there.
Thanks.
Hello. A ton of people who listen to
Adam.
every episode. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, as far as The League goes, I've watched the whole thing through probably more than once. Big fan of the show. It's actually the show that got me to start playing fantasy football. I have always been a big football fan, and for whatever reason, never crossed into fantasy. And watching this show is what finally made me jump into doing fantasy football, which I am very, very heavily involved with now. I'm in every season. I'm somewhere between 3 to 5 different leagues that I'm playing in at the same time.
Can we do a fantasy league between the 5 of us this year and sort of track it? Because I feel like I would be almost like Taco, where
it would be fun if we could get one more person. It would be doable theoretically.
It would be all super teams.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because Joe's not good at it. I don't think Gordo does it. Do you do it, Gordo?
I did it back.
And I'm not in any way good at it, so it would be fun to see.
Or we could venture into
we'll pull somebody else in though. We should do this and keep track of where we're going.
And then we can do a live draft on as an episode.
You can have Dave
Perfect.
in it. That would be sexy.
Why don't we have
enough
Dave?
to do it?
Okay, well, we'll figure out specifics later, but
That's Jay outright disagreeing with it.
No, I'm just saying it's a conversation that's going to last 20 minutes right now, I was going to say also maybe we can venture off in a daily fantasy, maybe look at a FanDuel or a DraftKings and do it that style, because usually you do need a little bit of a bigger league. This league, we'll talk about it later, but their league is only an 8-man, which is considered a very tiny league as far as fantasy football goes, but we'll get into all that. So it starts off with Pete, who's kind of in this video chat thing with his fantasy football app. It looked like there was a point where I was able to get a screenshot of it. It was bestfantasyfootballleague.com, which is a legitimate website to do fantasy football leagues, but I don't know, the chicken and egg thing, I don't know which actually came first. If they just bought the domain because they knew that they would get viewers because of the league. I don't know if this is a pre-existing site.
If not, I'm sure they got some money for it.
Yeah. Good move on their part if they capitalized on this.
It's crazy to see how these things were done too before Yahoo decimated any kind of third party. Because
there's actually a lot. No, it's
ESPN and Yahoo.
Yeah,
and
but
CBS has a league, and now there's the Sleeper app. A lot of people. There's a lot of independent.
Yeah, I guess
sites.
there is a chance for people to come, but for the
See, this is the in the weeds stuff that I'm my head is spinning where you guys are talking about this. And I'm I have no idea what you're
just
talking
all different
about.
hosting sites where you can have your league done. I mean, in the early days of fantasy football, it was guys who would literally have to go through the newspaper and read player stats and manually tally scores by hand through the newspaper.
And even later in the episode, not a spoiler or anything, but Kevin says he needs the checks on time for the fantasy league, which is now you just pay on the app and then the app pays out the winner and stuff like that. Back in the day, you'd have to physically hand people cash to start the league, which I think at one point we did too.
We used to do cash and
we used to do hard cash, and then it's easier for distribution purposes to just pay the website and have the website pay the winner back at the end.
One that I've always wanted to do is, I don't know if you guys know the comedian Doug Stanhope.
Yes.
It's a Boston comedian been
From
around forever.
the Second Man Show.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was
the bad version
that
with
was
Joe
him.
Rogan.
Yeah, but I love him. But one of the things he does, and they do it every January 1st through December 31st, is they do a league, but anybody can join it as a death pool, and you basically pick celebrities and people who you think are gonna die,
I would pick Doug Stanhope.
and their ages. Well, that's the fun thing, right? You can't pick somebody who's like. If somebody has they're crazy on one end, or if somebody's 99 years old, there's a point system.
Oh, damn, so
involved.
Betty White's off the table?
Yeah, so Betty White. No, you could pick her, but you'll only get 1 point. But if you pick Jonathan Taylor Thomas and he goes, you probably get like 50 points, right? So maybe January 1st we can look into doing a celebrity death pool too.
I'm gonna pick Whoopi Goldberg.
We've already killed Whoopi Goldberg. We can't kill her again.
Yeah, so Pete's sending this message to the rest of the guys in the league, like this video, and you can kind of see as he's delivering the message, they're using this device to introduce you to the rest of the characters in the show because they're all in their respective areas watching the video that Pete's sending out. So I kind of want to go through everyone, but starting with Pete.
I love this device too, though. By the way, what a good way to introduce.
It's a good way to
everybody
introduce
the
you to everybody in a fun, quick way. But Pete, Mark Duplass, I believe is his name. I could be butchering his last name's pronunciation, but Duplass. Does anyone know him from things before this? I kind of want to get into everyone as we go
Not
along.
from before this, but he popped up in a lot of shit after.
Yeah,
a lot
and
of
I would
stuff.
just like to state that I fucking hate him. I hate him as
Really?
an actor. I hate his character in this. I hate this guy with a burning passion. I fucking hate him. I hate him so
Fair,
much.
I really like him. I like
Yeah, I'm
a
a
lot
big
of
fan
his
of
Worst
him.
movies.
character
I'm a
on the
big fan
show.
too.
Easy.
I'm a big fan of his, and
For me,
he's
it's Taco.
he's like a writer director and everything too. Like, so I don't know how much he had to do with the creation of this show, and we'll get into it in a second. I don't know if still to this day, but at the time, Jenny was his wife in real life.
They're still married, yeah.
Still married? Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, Ferg, you must like the Creep movies, right?
Yeah, I love those movies.
Those
He's
Creep
awesome
movies
in
he
them.
did are great. I like all the movies he did. The Decathlon one is really good. The Puffy Chair is really good. He's
Yeah,
like
but
pretty
in that
interesting.
shitty Amy Schumer movie too, which nothing she does is good.
He was in some weird time traveler movie where he was kind of like borderline autistic or something. I forget exactly the premise. I watched it. It actually wasn't a bad movie, but he was not my favorite part of it.
I don't think I saw that one, but I mean, I don't dislike him as much as Nick does. This is Nick's Queen Latifah.
Yeah.
I don't hate Queen Latifah. I think
you hate Queen Latifah.
If you want to go back
character.
to last week's episode, Living Single, and you want to hear about how much Ferg hates Queen Latifah, go ahead and give that a good listen. But yeah, as we meet some of these characters, just to go in order, we meet Ruxin, who's played by Nick Kroll, who's telling his newborn baby as he's watching the video that he's going to go balls deep in them this year. So we're like 30 seconds into the show, and we have one of the characters telling his newborn infant son that he's going to go balls deep in his friend. So you get a really good vibe of what this show is.
Yeah.
So, Jay, you're not gonna plug Cavemen?
Nick Kroll, most known for Cavemen, the ABC smash comedy hit Cavemen.
Nick Kroll, a very funny man, a
Smash
very
comedy.
talented man, but Caveman is the worst TV show that has ever been.
Caveman is a phenomenal show, and I can't wait till we immortalize it when I assume episode 100 is the only show deserving of Caveman, right?
That's gonna be just you alone. Where none of us are gonna show up that day. It's gonna
Yeah,
be
so
just
as you just
Jay
heard
for an
everyone
hour
said,
waxing on Caveman.
Episode 100 when we
Nope.
do Caveman.
Nope.
We'll talk about Nick Kroll in his role there.
How about this? Episode 1000, we'll do Caveman.
Actually, to be honest with you, I only like Nick Kroll in two things, and it's this and What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh
can't
no, Big
stand
Mouth
him
is
in
really
most stuff
funny.
he's in.
I
Big
love
Mouth's
Big Mouth,
uncomfortable,
yeah.
but
I
it's funny.
haven't seen Big Mouth. I think
Nick
did we
Kroll,
talk
by
about
the
it on
way,
show?
I'm pretty sure is responsible for the divorce of Amy Poehler and Will Arnett.
He is. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, and him and Amy Poehler aren't even together anymore, so he just kind of fucked that one all up and then ran.
No, well, that's unfortunate.
That's
But
a bummer.
Yeah.
I am a fan of Nick Kroll. And then next we meet Kevin and his wife Jenny, which is I said Jenny, Katie Asselton,
Hazelton.
and Steve Renazizi play these characters. We already established Jenny's character is Pete in real life, our husband and wife. And Joe, just get it out real quick. Steve Renazizi, who plays Kevin, is one of the main characters of this show. Where do you best know him from?
I won't belabor this point, but anybody who's a longtime listener of this show, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you know my predilections and some of my interests. I would like to say that this may be the first time ever we have a genuine 9/11
Organic.
survivor organically on the show. And the fact that Steve Renazizi was able to outrun those towers and make it, he outkicked his coverage, if you will, to make it into this show. I'm going to try my best to not bring it up. not harp on it, but I don't even think it's worth noting any of his other credit. There's not a
Why
ton
was
of
this
them.
show canceled again?
What's that?
Why was this show canceled again?
I mean, I don't want to get into future stuff too much, and I don't think it's that. I honestly, if you watch the later seasons, they ran out of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, the show got worse.
But
I mean,
we'll get into that. And for
it
those
wasn't
of you,
just his 9/11 stuff, but
Right.
that didn't help for sure.
so yeah, I don't want to touch on it for too long, but just to catch the listeners up, Steve Renazizi, after 9/11, had made claims that he was in one of the towers that day and escaped early on and was a survivor of the attacks. And it turned out that that was not truthful, and it really blew up on him years later. And
Is blew up the right term to use right there?
okay, well, in any event, yes, just to catch you guys up on that, and we'll move past that for now, and
I
we'll
love
just
Jay's
keep going.
okay whenever something goes
Okay.
I know. Unfortunately, if I was to have a catchphrase on the show, it's just usually disappointed. Okay, let's move on.
okay.
You know, just to go back to it real quick, I can't stop thinking about the Amy
Tess
Poehler Nick
Nichols.
Kroll thing. Who sees visually Nick Kroll and then goes, I need to leave my husband for this guy? He is such a weird looking dude.
Well, I guess when your
And-
husband looks like Will Arnett, it's a difference in
I mean, yeah,
you
we're not
know?
talking about a bunch of tens here, but these are two comedians who work together and probably built up a rapport and live within that same world together. They, because like Nick Kroll, were they already together when he had done episodes of Parks and Rec?
I don't.
He was
no,
the douche, right?
No, yeah, he was the douche, but he was.
Forgot he
This
was
was
on
way.
that
This
show.
her and Will Arnett were already married at that point, I think.
Did they have kids? I think he actually did. They have kids together, or was that after and she already had kids?
With Will Arnett or Nick Kroll?
Yeah, Will Arnett.
I don't think her and Nick Kroll had kids.
No, I meant Arnett.
Oh, then I don't know. Either way.
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
Either way, a weird celebrity sort of scandalous thing that nobody talks about. But I think that I mean, I really like Will Arnett. I really like Nick Kroll. I feel like it's a weird, Amy Poehler. It's a weird kind of scenario that we
Well-
don't know the ins and outs of. But
I don't like Amy Poehler.
Well, I'm sure
So-
it's complicated, and none of us were there for it. So, I mean, I guess who's to say what happened? But to go back to Kevin and Jenny's scene there, as they're listening to Pete's speech via video, he includes a picture of Kevin from the losers, penalty. So in a lot of fantasy football leagues, a lot of people have last place punishments, and it looks like Kevin's character was the loser last year and had to. It was just go to an ATM naked. Was that the whole challenge?
yeah, it was just that. And Jay, just real quick, where do you
Picture.
know Jenny from?
The Office.
Thank you. That's what I assumed.
Yeah, so she's in the Blood Drive episode of The Office. It was like the Valentine's Day Lonely Hearts
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, she leaves
And
her glove
she's
behind.
she's the other one. Yeah, she's the other one donating blood when Michael Scott is, and they have this nice, fast little connection. And she leaves her glove behind, but he never finds her, unfortunately. But all
She
things
is
worked
way
for
out of Michael Scott's league.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the only place I know her right off the top of my head from. I'm sure she's been in a bunch of things I've seen, but I've watched The Office so many times that I've probably seen that single episode of The Office as many times as I've seen every episode of The League, because I've watched The Office on loop for, the better part of the last half of my life.
Are we getting you out of that comfort zone where you only watch The Office now that you're on this show?
I have no time, so I don't watch The Office as much as I used to, because I honestly just don't, between prepping for this show and everything else and work, unfortunately, I can't loop The Office as nonstop as I used to, which I don't know will probably be good for me somewhere down the road. I'm branching out into other programming.
And now you get to break into the bonus episode stuff on Peacock.
Yes, those supersized episodes. Next we have Taco, who's, man, I'm butchering everyone's name. Joe, just say it for me, please.
John Lois. It's French.
Is that how you pronounce it? Really? I've never said it that way. So I would have.
I said it earlier, but I feel about Taco how Nick feels about Pete. I hate his character. And
I
it
love
gets worse
Taco.
throughout the show, but I can't.
No, he's
fucking
so
stand him.
to me he's so
What
necessary
about
for the
Taco
show.
Tunes?
But yeah, so your first introduction into Taco is he's like smoking out of like a ceramic unicorn, and which he claims gave him a mental erection. So like he's just a wacky character. Best known for he had a bunch of like videos that were really popular on the internet beforehand, like "Show Me Your Genitals" and "Everyday Normal Guy." Was that the name of the other one?
Yeah, he's like a singing comedian. He had a few albums out. The song that he plays later on in this episode is actually a song that's from one of his albums beforehand.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's not for this show. Like, it's already
Oh, I always
recycled.
thought it was.
The first time I ever saw him was like really late at night. He had like a Comedy Central half hour where it was all songs, and he played that birthday song. So when I first saw this, I was like, oh, where do I know this song from? And I had to sort of like backwards go figure it out.
And we'll get into that scene a little later, because that maybe one of the highlights of the entire episode. And then Andre, who was played by Paul Scheer, he's been in a million things. And you're watching, they show a clip of him when he was younger being tricked by the guys. You can see he's kind of like the one that they all pick on the most. And he's getting a tattoo of Pete on his back. And I don't know if they established what it was. He thought it was. He just thought it was.
Eagle, right?
Was it supposed to be an eagle?
It was
I didn't remember.
Yeah, it was supposed to be an
I think
eagle.
so.
But it definitely wasn't supposed to be his buddy's face.
They
Paul
go
Scheer-
way too hard on this dude.
Yeah,
To the point where it's
brutal.
unbelievable that he would stick around.
By
as
the
a
end of
friend,
the
yeah.
season, end of the show, not to jump ahead to like where we see, but by the end of the show, sometimes you're like, "There's no way this guy is a rich, successful doctor in a major U.S. city. He would just leave these dudes behind and find people who actually didn't treat him
Yeah.
like shit." It's insane.
Like, there's got to be people who like him in this
Yeah.
world, and he just stands by them. Yeah, but Paul Scheer's in a ton of stuff. Anything come to mind, like, first off, that you know him best from?
The first thing I would have seen him in is he was one of the cast members on the Upright Citizens Brigade TV show that was on Comedy
Okay.
Central when we were kids, with Amy Poehler, too. So, like, that's definitely where I would have seen him from. And I will say now, as podcasters, the only time I've ever gone to see a podcast live was to see Paul Scheer's podcast a couple years ago.
Is that the one he does with
It's
El
him
Cunado?
and his wife, June Diane Raphael, and then, speaking of the league,
the brother-in-law? He's another Jason.
Rafi.
Jason.
Jason
Starts with
Mantzoukas.
an M. What is it?
Mantzoukas.
He's
That's
He's
also
in
also a
everything
Boston
now.
North Shore guy, so
Yeah.
represent there. He's not a South Shore guy.
Absolutely, and he's hilarious. I hate that he's not in this episode because I'd love to talk about him. But
I know he's so funny, but that
He was
podcast
also
is
on
really good.
a few episodes of The Good Place.
yep, he was
Yep.
in the good place, which
Yeah.
we touched on earlier. If
to
you want to
me
listen
the
back,
best part of the entire Good Place.
he's
the best
great.
part of the league.
He's also the best part of the league. Yeah,
Oh, Veep. He was in Veep. I was just looking it up to see what I remembered him from, but he was in a bunch of episodes of Veep.
And he
killed
did.
me.
He was also on Parks and Rec, which we talked about earlier, because Ruxin was also on there.
he's also the
Who was
funniest
he
part
on?
of that movie, The Dictator,
He was
Who was he in?
he was Dennis Feinstein. He created all the fragrances.
the perfume guy.
Oh, him. I thought we were still talking about Paul Scheer.
No. Paul Scheer.
Paul Scheer was on Parks and Rec though. He's the guy who helps them make the playgrounds.
Oh, really?
No.
I don't remember him off the top of my head. I'd have to watch that.
No,
back.
that's not him.
That's Parks and Rec, right? He runs away and it's like a scam.
No, that's not Paul
I don't.
Scheer.
I
Yeah.
can't say one way or another, so I'm not sure. Paul Scheer also did he was on a ton of episodes of Fresh Off the Boat, which is a great show that I would love to cover on this show eventually too.
Well, we definitely will. I love that show.
So that's it. I mean, we're introduced to all
That's
the
main
characters right
cast,
there.
But that's a pretty good way to introduce us to 6 people.
Yeah, we talked about it for a minute, but I mean, it was a really quick clip, and it gave you just like a quick taste of who everybody was. It gave you just enough to kind of get a vibe for who everybody was.
And also in that show, there's 5 guys on that in the main cast, right? And there's 5 of us. And I had an inkling to try to give a who is everybody, but then I just stopped and all I could think of is Steve Ranazizi is doing his entire phone call while on the toilet. And I was like, it's not worth figuring out who everybody else is when it's just so easy to say who Gordo is.
Yeah.
Because I've never met anybody who would like to talk on the phone while he's in the bathroom more than Gordo.
So
Two
from this,
birds,
we get,
one stone.
we get to the title screen, which is very, very simple. It's just basically the logo for the episode and just quick like da 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 da. It's just kind of the music. Very sporty. Not much to talk about there. And
I think as we go through shows and we analyze them so much now, like versus just watching a billion shows your whole life, I kind of love the shows now that just go to like, da, ba, da, da. Here we are.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause, like,
Get it out of the
you know-
way. I don't need a
Yeah, me
minute-long
too.
intro.
I think it's weird. I think like nostalgia, we really like the old ones because like there's these timeless songs that we like to like think back about. We talked last week about Living Single, like 20 plus years later, we all remember the song that went to that. But a lot of these shows nowadays, like in we just talked about, by the way, The Office that I watch nonstop all the time. But like shows like this, The Good Place, the ones that just like, here's the show, let's get going. Like, let's just get to it. I'm cool with that too.
I still think one of the greatest gifts given to the world in the past 5 years is the button that says skip intro. The
Oh,
first
yeah.
time I saw that, I was like, find the person who
Godsend.
made that. And
Yep.
we all give them like 5 cents from our paycheck for the rest of our lives because they just made things so much better for everybody.
Fuck that guy.
Ferg's like, they're ruining intros for me.
If you're going to do a long, drawn out intro, you have to go for gold with it.
Yeah, it's gotta
If you're
be
not good-
legit.
Yeah, if
Full
you're not going to
House.
put the effort into it, then don't bother. Just make it a small button and just move on.
I want like DuckTales level of awesome. Woo!
Yeah, me
I was
too.
gonna say, who's the first one to go? Woohoo!
Is that the gold standard for show intros? Is
I'm not
DuckTales?
kidding. I think that is the greatest theme song of all time, and I'm not being not hyperbole. Like I think it's one of the greatest theme songs ever written.
I just recently watched the entire cartoon opening for the Chipmunks from when we were kids.
Oh,
Rescue
Chippendale's
Rangers?
Rescue
Chippendale
Rangers.
Rescue Rangers.
No,
It's
the
another good
Chipmunks,
one with another good
Alvin,
theme song.
Simon,
Alvin is-
Oh,
Theodore.
fuck them.
No.
Doo-doo.
I
Yeah,
got excited
rewatch
when
it.
I thought it was Chippendales.
Dude, that song rocks pretty good.
Nah,
Well, if you want
Chippendale's
to talk about
Rescue
other
Rangers.
chipmunks, watch the Rescue Rangers theme. 'cause
I went
that
to
one
a,
is also
uh,
good.
so catchy.
I went to
Yep.
a character breakfast in Disney World and Chip threw a banana at my face.
You know
Did you have it
Chip.
coming?
Yeah, I met Chip. We're not on good terms.
Oh,
So we
Apparently.
can't get him on the show.
sorry to hear that. So, anyways, let's get to the next scene is Pete's wife walks into the room basically as he's finishing up that message. Looks away. It looks like he skipped work maybe to do all this, and that's what frustrated her. She's well aware of what this league is, doesn't seem to approve. And yeah, so did he take the day off work just to like send a shit talking message to all his friends? I mean, that's kind of on brand with all of them.
What is she from? Because she looks familiar.
She's in a lot of stuff, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head. She's one of those. She just appears in things all the time, but she's never really the star of anything.
She had a big role in something recently we just watched, and I hate that I don't remember off the top of my head. But she's definitely like a working actor that pops up in things. But something very recently, like probably like around the beginning of the pandemic, where like I forgot I was watching it. I was like, I can't place this, and Kelsey was like, oh, it's Megan.
Oh, is that why she was mad at him? Because he skipped work? Because I didn't get that.
That was the vibe I got. Is that like that maybe he skipped work to do this?
I don't think it's a skip work thing. I think it's him being obsessed with fantasy football.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
he's
what
kind
I
of like a
got,
shithead who
too.
just likes fantasy football, and he's not
Right.
like paying attention because as they go further along the episode, their values don't seem to align, right?
Correct. The next thing we get is Pete and Kevin on the phone now. And Joe, you mentioned this earlier. So Kevin's just on the toilet the whole time, and he's got like a fantasy football magazine in his hand.
And drinking a beer.
And this is when Pete discovers that every time he's ever talked to Kevin on the phone, that's when Kevin's on the toilet. Which I guess it's like one of those, I'm sure it happens. I think at some point we've probably all been on the phone while on the toilet, I guess. But I don't make a conscious effort to do it. And it's one of those, it happens, but I never want to know about it. Like if I'm on the phone with you, don't tell me you're on the toilet. Like I just don't need to know. It's
Our
fine.
phones have mute buttons, and they should for a reason, right? If you're going to pee, I mean, for me, it's more peeing on the phone because I'm on 8,000 calls a day. Sometimes you just get to pee and you just mute. And if they start talking, you have to like cut back the stream for a second and then
That's why you
remute
sit
and keep
down.
going.
I flushed the toilet on a conference call once and I forgot to mute myself. And like you can definitely tell who did it because you can see your like circle light up.
Yeah, you
As
know,
sound is
you
being
just
produced.
made the noise. Yeah.
And one of my managers was like, yeah, so somebody's not on mute. If you could just mute yourself, that would be good. I was like, oh fuck me, dude.
At that point too, you're like, they heard the flush. What else did they hear?
The other thing that we find out in this part of the conversation is that Kevin and Jenny are going to try to have another child, which Pete's not happy about because Megan, Pete's girlfriend, also would like for them to have a child. And
His
he's
wife,
tried.
they're married.
Are they married? Okay,
They're
I'm
married,
sorry.
yeah.
So Pete's wife and him, she would like to have a child, but he is not ready for that. And by one of his best friends having another child is only stacking up against him for that argument when he's trying to fight against having another kid.
Also, just bleeding into what a shitty dude this guy is.
Oh, she was Ricky Bobby's wife.
Yes,
Oh,
thank you. I knew it
there
was
it is.
something I
Okay.
saw recently, and I did just watch that recently. That's right.
She was
Also,
in a
way
movie
out of
called
his
My
league.
Wife is Retarded. On her IMDb.
But yeah, no.
Ferg's first foray into movie production a few years ago.
Filmed
Can I
in
just say,
Fergburg.
can I just say, as someone who's never seen the show, outside of Roxanne and Taco, every time you guys mention somebody's name, I have to think of who you guys are talking about
Right.
because they all kind of look similar and they have such generic names that
I would
You know,
say
like
with
just
Pete
have-
and Kevin,
yeah,
I could
it's
see
hard.
mixing up Pete and
Andre.
Kevin the most. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as somebody that watched this show like multiple times, I had to do like study today too because I forgot their names.
I
and
can never
watched the
remember
show a million
Kevin's
times.
name.
So yeah, Kevin and Pete, I had to like remind myself which one's which and stuff. So I get that. Especially
I'll
with someone
say-
in fresh.
I've said this, I think, before in an earlier episode. I tend to not remember any characters' names the first few episodes in. I'm always forgetting who's actually who name-wise, and usually as you continue watching a show, you just get used to everything. It's almost like when you start at a new job, right? You don't know everyone's name right away because you get introduced to 50 people at once, and you know,
No,
eventually they'll start sticking with you. For the purpose of the show, it's just easy to write everything down and refer to them by characters instead of saying the guy, this dude. But yeah, I mean, I don't think on a first on a first run watching a show, I don't think it's even expected that you memorize every character's name right away. It's at least I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that this show did a poor job of not stating their names and like making it kind of stick with you outside of, like I said, Taco and Rock.
Well, I think
Whereas,
some
like,
shows are actually way worse. I think way back to our very first episode, Friends, I remember like trying to clock the first time they would mention people's names, and like someone like I think like Phoebe's name wasn't even mentioned until like 20 minutes into the episode. Like it just wasn't spoken of.
That's because in reality, I wouldn't be like, oh, hello, I, Ferg, think you should do this.
Right, it's
Don't
not
you think
natural
so,
to talk
Jay?
that way, right? Yeah. The best way to do that is usually if two people are in a room talking about the third person, you know what I mean? Then they can reference their name or something like that.
No, that makes sense.
I really like this next scene that's coming up because it's when Pete's going to bed now with Megan, his wife, and he doesn't know where his lucky draft shirt is. And, she says she doesn't know where it is. That comes into play later in the episode. She asked him about, have you talked to Kevin recently? So now he's nervous that she's aware that they're trying to have a child. So he's trying pretty hard to avoid that part of the conversation. But this is where, like, it spins real quick. This is the only thing I didn't like about the scene is it quickly turns to them just hooking up. Like, there's, like, no transition into it.
For less than a minute.
Yeah, they're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. So they're talking, and then they start making out or whatever, and then she goes right for it and slides a finger up the number 2 hole,
She goes
which
right in for it, man.
which he's not a fan of at all. He does not like this at all, and he's trying to get out of it.
My first laugh, though, when she put her hand on his face after, I fucking
Yes.
died.
That's the
I was
best
at
part
work
of
with
it.
my
The
I was
hand
at
on the
work with my
face.
headphone in trying to act like I'm working, and I just burst into laughter. Everyone started looking at me. It was
Yeah.
like,
What does she say as she's walking out?
She says, "Good job, old boy." Gives him like a little
Old
slap on
boy.
the ass.
He
But yeah,
just, like,
she seemed very satisfied. I mean, again, he's not a big fan of the finger in the ass situation and was trying to get out of it. And I think him trying to buck out of it turned him into like a like a horse that was just it's trying to get out of the
old
stable there.
take on the old rodeo.
And then but she was apparently very satisfied by the all of 10 seconds worth of sex they just had. She was like super pleased walking out of that room.
I mean, lucky for him, right? If he wasn't enjoying it, at least it wasn't a long scenario, right? That goes by pretty quickly.
But that was, I mean, I know you're not going to show an entire session of sex on the scene, but
Yeah, but you know how you get around that? You cut in they're already having sex. You don't know how long they were doing it beforehand.
yes. Because the rest of
Like-
the conversation before wasn't that important, other than they were trying to establish the lucky shirt, which he could have asked about after they were done.
I don't know. I think it's funnier that it just starts, that happens, and then it ends. I think that's like a good way to do it, right? Because I think it's funnier the fact that it's only 10 seconds long.
But were we supposed to like question that? Like, or was it
No,
supposed to
I
be
think
like,
it was
they
just
won't.
TV sex is fast.
Yeah, they weren't even thinking. I was like, this is so short to show front to back. This is supposed to be the entire session, and it was so quick.
Apparently it made an impression on all of us, though. So
It did.
maybe
Yeah.
it
Well,
was
I
the
think
joke.
the situation that she had put him in was it'll flag your attention because it's not something you often see on television. Yeah.
That's also too. He says the tip is already too much. That was the part that made me.
Yeah.
Like just the tip. I was like, the tip's already too much.
And then
Doesn't she also yell, "I'm the boss" during that? Which is that's
Did
her
she?
dirty
I
talk to him. I'm the boss. I'm the captain now.
from this scene, we go right into the next morning. I assume it's the next morning. And Kevin and Jenny are throwing a birthday party for their daughter. It's her 5th birthday. And they're in the kitchen with Taco, who is her uncle. And he's under the impression that she was turning like 9. So his concept of time is way off.
You start getting that Taco is kind of from the very beginning. You know, he's always smoking weed. He's
Aloof.
a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Aloof is a light way of saying it.
And I like that in this conversation, Jenny's talking kind of about how advanced their daughter is. Is it Ellie? Is Ellie the name of their
Ellie,
daughter?
yeah.
Talking about how advanced Ellie is. And as this is happening, you can see like the magnetic board with all the letters that like you would put on your fridge typically. And the word whore was
It just
spelled
says
out.
Or.
Yeah.
And Ruxin has like a comment about it too right away, right? Like you realize too, like Ruxin's character is developed from the very beginning.
And then it was a matter of Taco asking about like, oh, do you want to know what I did yesterday? And they're like, got stoned and watched the movie. Like, yeah, I watched Total Recall twice. It's like,
What an amazing day. Total Recall twice.
and that's when we find out that there's a birthday song that he wrote for Ellie that, you know, you mentioned earlier and we'll get into. But have you ever watched the same movie twice in the same day?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never done that. I can't.
I've never done that.
I think I've done it with Step Brothers.
The
When I was
closest I
younger,
can
I
think
had
of.
VHS tape. I had 2 tapes. One had Batman '89, followed by Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and one had Ghostbusters 1 and 2. Not the shitty
I hope
one
it
that you
was Who
started
Framed
later on,
Roger
Jay.
Rabbit you watched twice.
Not Ghostbusters 2016, at which I am the star of that movie.
Yep, and that's why it failed. But I would watch both of those tapes when I was a kid. Like certain days, I'd watch them over and over again. So like I'd watch Batman and then Roger Rabbit, rewind the tape, Batman, Roger Rabbit. Like that could be a whole day. So sometimes I would do that. Not so much now, obviously. I don't think we have enough free time to watch the same movie twice. But
No,
I know,
I think
life
there's like
sucks.
I used to do it with the Leslie Nielsen classic, Repossessed.
oh, I thought you were gonna say Wrongfully Accused.
Dracula Dead and Loving It.
All great Leslie Nielsen movies.
There's no
Those
bad
Those are all
Leslie Nielsen movie.
fantastic.
He also stars in the last season of Golden Girls with my girl Rue McClanahan.
You killed my Leslie Nielsen talk.
The only, the only thing I can think of is like, you know, sometimes like you'll have like a movie channel on TV that'll like, they have this kind of loop of 3 or 4 movies playing all day. Like I think there's been times where you fall asleep or you're not really paying attention to TV, you're doing work and like the same movie will come on later in the day. It'll like, they'll be playing like Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3. And then like after that Karate Kid starts all over again and they just play like that's like just how that day goes for the channel. So
FX
that's like,
recently did that with the American Pie movies.
yeah, so I think that's like the closest I've come to watching a movie multiple times in the same day.
Yeah, because sometimes you'd fall asleep watching something and it would still be on. Like TBS was big on that, right? Like they would play a movie
Just
at 3
keep
in the
playing
morning
it,
and
yeah.
then play it at 9 in the morning too. You'd wake up in the same spot, kind of hungover, and be like, "Well, I guess this is what we're doing." Like I'm not gonna.
What about TNT with a Christmas Story on Christmas? 24 hours.
Oh, you know,
Oh,
what,
that's
Ferg?
true.
That's an amazing point.
Oh,
I probably
yeah.
watched that movie a few times that day in pieces, right? It's kind of always on. Are there any other movies that get played 24 hours like that?
Not that I know of.
I can't
There's
think
been
of
like
any.
tributes, like there's been days where it's like channels that play like I can't remember which channel.
Every
like,
Rambo
AMC might
or
be like,
whatever,
yeah,
yeah.
I was just about to say Rocky. Actually,
I remember
So it's
when
like,
they kept playing. They played Ghost on loop when Whoopi Goldberg died.
R.I.P. Whoopi.
That took me a second. Thank you.
But so now Pete shows up at the party and he shows up with the Shiva, which is their fantasy football trophy. And there's just like it's unexplained, and there's just a photo of a young Indian girl on the trophy, and it doesn't get addressed at all. And peeling back, obviously we've all watched the show. There is eventually explanation to all this, but the fact that they don't touch on it at all, and it just happens to be like some young, like, because these are all grown men, and there's a picture of a child, like a younger Indian girl, just in the middle of their trophy. It's very strange, very, very strange.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I love though in the first episode they just don't mention it. Now, Gordo, as somebody who'd never seen the show, what were your thoughts as they just showing a trophy? Because I feel like we're all coming from it like we know what eventually happens. Were you just like whatever, or did you like have questions about it?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that on the top there was the Hindu god Shiva, I think, is what it is, because there's like a medallion on the top with like the multiple arms. And then there's the picture that I didn't get, but again, I'm sure they address it down the line, but the fact that they didn't address it right then and there kind of, I think, added to the humor of it, as someone
Yes.
who's never watched the show, but that's just my take on it.
I know for so I'm in like I said, a few fantasy football leagues now. For 2 of the leagues I'm in, one with Nick and Ferg are both in, and then my one at work, we actually have like championship belts that you can now buy for your fantasy football league. So we have 2 different fantasy football belts for those 2 leagues, and I've seen all kinds of different trophies. I guess I don't know what if we do one amongst ourselves, what we would probably have to. I think the most logical thing is to buy like a replica Shiva, probably, if we were at all
That
doing
makes the
together.
most
but-
sense. Or we find some girl we went to school with and weirdly deify her.
Yeah, that would be so. Oh man, that's like think of like the logistics of that. And I don't want to get into it because it's really past episode 1. But when that person discovers that you have it, it's just so weird. But yeah. So Andre and Pete get to talking, and you can tell that like they just shit on Andre all the time. But Andre's retaliations are so poor because like when he's trying to come back at him, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get your sloppy seconds, and I'm gonna blow." He's talking about the trophy, by the way. But like how he's describing it are these really weird sexual things that just put him in a submissive situation. It's not like doesn't really make sense to.
Yeah, I'm gonna give
use
you
this
a
as
blowjob.
retaliation. Yeah.
Yeah,
he tries so
that was-
hard, it
that-
just
that-
never works.
Hey, clip that too, please.
Followed
used
right
it.
by for who's boner?
boner?
I'm gonna give you a blowjob.
And although I think this is a device that could date a show, I actually really like that they use actual current players at the time when they're
Yeah.
talking fantasy football. because it makes the conversation seem more realistic.
I think that makes more sense for a show like this. That's the equivalent of not going 555-055, right? Like you're putting real people into it, and we can't discuss if we know anything about the future of the show, but the show like this opens you up to be like, every football player can be on this show now. You can, sort of move that in and out.
See, I didn't like that.
You prefer to be in a world alone?
Yeah. I mean, I'll get to it. That's part of my reasoning down the line. But
I feel like you've completely tipped your hand, but we'll get into that, I guess, later on.
Yeah, well, I'll get into it later on. But yeah, I did not like that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, see, I'm a big fan. And even looking back, like I found interest in, I know it was 2009. So at this point, it's like some of those players are so outdated, but I don't know. It just makes the conversation so authentic instead of making up fake players. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you see, I feel like it's only relevant for 2009. It doesn't mean anything in 2021.
No, but it doesn't take, because the show's about a fantasy football league, but
No, I get that.
really is about them, each character.
But fantasy football is so dependent on
They could have drafted
the
P.P.
league.
McGee and
Yeah, I think the problem you're having here, though, is
matter, like-
Gordo. I'm with Ferg in this one. The problem you're having is the reason I never wanted to watch this show to begin with. You're holding too much on the fact about fantasy football, where the fantasy football is like the third thing about the show, right? It's about all these dudes. They just happen to be, that's the reason they get together. It's
because
not
I
so much
guess
a football show.
Like if you're not a big football fan, right? Like in this case, right? Like Joe, you don't watch football.
Yeah, I hate football. I love this show.
When they're discussing players early on, you don't know if they're making up names. They could have been fake names, and it really wouldn't have mattered. So,
and some players they mentioned before, I thought they were. The first time I heard the name Chad Ochocinco, I was like, "That's a funny name they made up."
To be fair,
the Patriots.
It is technically a made-up name by Chad Johnson.
Yeah, he did change his last
He
name.
changed his name to Chad Ochocinco because he wore the number 85.
Oh well, fuck that guy.
But he legally changed his last name to Ochocinco, and then he played on the Patriots. Our home team, for those listening. Yep.
If you're listening, Ochocinco, I'm calling you out.
No, it's actually not as bad as Ron Artest becoming Meta World Peace is his actual name.
Wait, what?
I think he's back to Ron Artest.
He might be back now.
No, I think he is still Meta World Peace. He changed his name to Meta World Peace. Also, just if you're... Go look up Ron Artest's interview where a lady asks him about the game, and then he goes on about how having baby teeth fall out and getting your real teeth to come in afterwards is the greatest thing that God has given us. Doesn't reference the basketball game at all. Just talks for 2 minutes about baby teeth. It's amazing.
He also jumped into the audience and fought the fans. So
Ron Artest did that. Meta World Peace would never do that.
Yes.
I hate this conversation so much.
But and I like also to go back into the scene, Taco walks up and he's like, "Oh, cool trophy," and like has no idea, and it's a trophy that he's won.
Yeah,
it's like,
your
name's on
his
it.
name on it.
You've had this trophy for a year in your house.
I want to know how he won. Like,
you've seen it. I mean, you've seen it fantasy. There's a lot of luck involved too. It's like as much as you want to.
Yeah, Jay's won a bunch of times, so.
I put the work in, but
Jay puts the work in, but certain other people who have been champs in our league, I don't know.
Yeah, we won't get into specific names.
Yeah,
I guess if we're gonna go over, does that make me the Pete?
Yeah,
no,
I'm not the most likable person, and I've won a bunch of times. Yeah, I can see that. Also, Taco introduces himself to Ruxin, and Ruxin's like, "We've been friends for 15 years."
Yeah, that was funny. That was funny.
I like how nonchalantly Ruxin, he's like, "Hey, man, yeah, we've known each other for 15 years. Like, it's not the first time this has happened."
It's weird because a joke like that typically to me is too far and unrealistic, but I don't know. I like Taco's character a lot, and it completely works for me.
And I love Nick Kroll, and this is one of the greatest characters of all time. He plays this so well.
He is Ruxin to me. Like, he's just...
I know it was
anything
hard.
I see him in now, I'm like, oh, that's Ruxin.
It really is hard to separate himself
differently.
Just his facial expressions, the way he says things, like you said, Jay, and even sometimes just a noise. Like it's funny when he makes a noise. I don't know how that works.
There's
Ruxin's home alone and he's ready to rock.
But my issue with Taco isn't the character himself. It's the fact that they keep that character around. If that makes any sense.
Kevin's brother.
I feel like I agree with Ferg.
It's not that. It's the fact that they know how he is. They know he's like that, and they bring him to like a child's birthday. Like clearly they didn't want him to have a song or anything. because he's clearly done shit like this before, and they
Right.
keep bringing him on.
Yeah, this isn't
Like,
new. This isn't like the first
There's
time.
a lot more extreme examples, which I won't get into because those are the future of the show, which we don't cover. But
yeah,
like,
he
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a mainstay. Like he shouldn't always be
He's
there.
meant to be the more extreme, and that's why I think you do see him off on his own a lot. You know, he's not always with the rest of them, but it's an extreme character, and for this type of show, it works. It wouldn't work on a lot of other shows because he's very outside of the like real world. But the next scene is when they are deciding their draft order, which I think is a really fun scene because it was done very creative. And again, you know, having played fantasy football as long as I have, like, we always make a big deal about when we do our draft order. We were at Ferg's house for the 4th of July this year, and that's when we did our order for our league, just because a lot of us were there. And we just do the standard, put all the names in a hat and pick them out in order. But what they did was they put all the names in, or all the numbers in a hat and had everyone select a number out of the hat. And everyone's excited because they're thinking that's their number for the draft. But no, number 1 doesn't mean you're the first overall pick. It means all those kids over to the side who are at this birthday party who are numbered are about to have a potato sack race. And that is your child. The order at which they finish this race in is the order at which you will be drafting in, which I thought was very clever and fun because then as they race, now you have all these grown adults screaming at these children like they're racehorses trying to get them to finish this potato sack race first.
by the way, that's also the first mistake of the show is they pick out, they all got assigned a number from a thing in the hat. And Ruxin says to Kevin, you didn't even pick your daughter. And he's like, yeah, because she's slow, but it was randomly chosen. So it's like,
Right.
That doesn't make any
it's a
sense.
throwaway.
I do love though that even like so the only I guess Ruxin has kids and Kevin have kids, and they're both just such shitty parents, and they just
Right.
treat children so shitty in this
Yeah.
entire episode. It's so fucking funny.
And Ferg, I think if you're going to pick that scene apart, I think the other thing to note is that not everyone from the league is there to pick a number.
yeah, they have two guys that are like that auto draft, like all the thing. And
They're like out of town guys, and then they had one guy that was like via the phone.
Oh yeah, isn't one of them Adam Brody?
Eventually, I think,
down
yeah.
the road, yeah. So eventually Ruxin gets his number 1 overall pick, and he's making it very known that he'll be taking Adrian Peterson with the number 1 pick. And then we spot the Oracle, who is Matt Freeman. He's a young kid. He was how old would you say he is? Yeah.
Special needs Harry
Special
Potter.
needs Harry Potter.
Yeah.
You know, a flaxen-haired little maniac, which is like again so perfectly wordy. This show, the writing. I mean, we talked about, I think it was last week's episode, where the origin of water cookies is this show, right? There's so many things that they come up with in the writing. And the idea of like calling a character who's a little kid the Oracle and then having everything be around him being a fantasy football maniac and then calling him a flaxen hair, like everything about the writing is so spot on.
So do we know roughly how old this kid is? Like, I'm not fantastic.
I thought he was
at
9.
guessing
He's
ages.
at Ellie's birthday party and Ellie is younger than 9, but you'd
She's
assume he might be
5,
like
but-
a neighbor kid.
Well, when you're at that age too, you could also just be like
It's kids. Kids are
your dad's friend's kid comes to the party because he invited his friends. So like
This
the kids don't
whole
always line up.
this whole story arc with him and Ruxin is like my favorite part of the entire episode. Too.
It's so good. And it just keeps going.
Yeah.
Again, it's the writing of this show where like it gets more and more extreme. Even to a point where we'll get to it later where you think it should end and he is running after the scenario to make it keep going.
There's also and to catch you up too, like this kid who they call the Oracle, he's a young child, let's say 10ish, maybe about 10.
I think 10's a safe bet.
And
I thought they said he was 9
was
in
it?
the show.
Was it
Yeah,
officially
I
9?
thought they
All right.
said it was
Yeah, I
9.
think Gordo's right. I think they did say he was 9.
Okay, so he's 9 years old and he's a fantasy football expert. It's explained that because basically he has no wife, he has no kids. All he has to do is focus all his time and attention on fantasy football. Also, as they're introducing him, like one of them goes, "Is he licking a hot dog right now?" Like he's just like this strange kid.
I love that idea though, that like think about when you were super into something when you were like 9 or 10 years old, right? Like, yeah, you could just dive right into it and it's your entire life. Like you could just study, I mean, baseball cards, you read the stats. Like you always hear about little kids who were like, I knew every home run that every player from this season.
Is that
hit or
when
whatever.
is that when you got into flashlights, Joe?
That's when I got into flashlights. Yeah, flashlights and drawing little check marks on pieces of paper to confuse Nick.
You son of a bitch. Tell me what it was about.
Never. It was how many days apart I was from Rue McClanahan.
It looked like a prison wall, but
It looked like a prison wall when we were done.
And then, so now the next scene is Taco is finally going to play the song that he wrote for his niece Ellie, which started off kind of nice.
Yeah, it's a sweet little folk song, simple chord structure, happy song about a birthday.
And as the lyrics progress, as the song goes deeper and deeper, they get dirtier and dirtier. One of the earlier things he said when you first see that this song's taking a turn is he said something about how he tore her panties off and his wee wee was hard as a rock. And
I love that.
He of
And
course
then the little girl goes, wee wee.
yeah.
Hard. Like,
And of course he's talking about Ellie's parents, his brother and sister-in-law. And
Yeah, this is about her parents.
Basically her story of how she was conceived.
Basically, you realize that the story, which means that, Kevin got drunk and explained to Taco and the rest of the guys how they conceived Ellie, and that it means that he was too drunk to put on a condom and they had too much wine, and he made this into a sweet love song, which is so great. That also makes you realize that Kevin's character, you can totally picture how he told them the story and how miserable he was about it, and then the way that Taco's brain
interpreted
it into a love song.
How do you think Kevin made that up like he makes up other stories?
There's also there's the lines as well about how they start giving each other head. And
So they formed a 69 and your mom came at least 3 times.
yeah.
So good.
Why did she allow, like, the wife allow it to go on so long? Like, because Kevin was distracted. You have the excuse that he's trying to, like, spy on the Oracle talking to Ruxin.
Yes, as that's all happening, he's also he's catching Ruxin trying to talk to the Oracle. So he's supposed to be filming this birthday party and this disgusting song his brother wrote, but he keeps panning over to try to spy on Ruxin and the Oracle talking, like on like a swing set or something creepy.
Did this scene remind anybody of, the scene in Old School, which would have been like, a few years before this, in the same kind of comedy, where there's the band playing and they like throw in the swears?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Is that
everyone's
the
just kind
Dan
of
bands?
handling it, but when they hear a swear, everyone kind of gives a half glance backwards, like, wait, what? Like, they just say that? Like, that was sort of what the scene reminded me of.
And then when the song finally gets cut off, we cut to Megan talking to Jenny, and this is when she finds out that they're trying to have a child, because I think she offered to grab her like a drink or something. And now Pete's getting nervous, and he's slipping in all these little comments about like, yeah, that's a great decision because you guys are totally ready and this is a good time for you guys right now because you're positive this is what you want. And he's really trying to make it known that they're in different situations in life, and that's why what's good for them is not good for him and his wife.
I mean, that's a tough situation. I don't think any of us have ever been into that before, but like, I can't even imagine if like you're in a situation where, especially as we get older, right, where like if you want to have kids organically, the time sort of is an issue, right? To be on opposite sides of that is not going to be a fun conversation.
well, yeah, and then they start talking about scooping out the swimmers and
Well, yeah, it's just, and it's one of these conversations that like you don't want to
Call
have
back
with
the
your
finger in the
partner
ass.
in front of all your friends. Yeah. So, she starts accusing him of having slow swimmers, and that's why nothing's happened yet. And yeah, that's when he mentions, well, maybe I wouldn't be so distracted if there wasn't a finger in my ass. And,
yeah, and then everybody's looking at them at this point.
a very uncomfortable thing to just spit out in the middle of
at
a
a
party.
little girl's like 7th birthday party. It's
Yes.
so loud
Fifth
the entire
birthday
time.
party.
She's 5. I think she's turning 6, no?
Is she turning 6?
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know if she's 4 turning 5 or 5 turning 6, because
It's
he said
irrelevant,
she's
really.
5 to Taco earlier.
It's hard to tell at that age group though, where it's like you're all sort of just in the middle of like young kid.
Right.
I also feel like this, I mean, the whole show is like, you feel like it would be almost like a reach or whatever but in reality, it's more true to form than anything, really. Like, this is the kind of, we all,
I feel like
some
for
of us have kids.
Maybe we're not the norm, but
No, I think like it's very, like I could be very much picture myself having a grotesque conversation with Ferg while we're somewhere with his son who was off doing something, right?
It probably happened on my 4th of July party that was
Right,
full of
exactly. It's
all of
just
our
like
friends' kids and my
yeah.
kid.
Not everything is PG and I think that's,
Right, it doesn't
captured well.
change the way you are just because you have a
Right.
kid. You're still
Right,
going to be
yeah.
the gross dickhead that you always have been.
right.
Yeah.
I do like the little button on that part of the scene is well, she slaps him after the finger in the ass comment and kind of walks off embarrassed. But then Ellie says whore as she walks by, and like Taco's like super proud of her.
Yeah, and he pays her.
He gives her a treat like a dog.
After that, we get to the next scene, which is Ruxin and Kevin coming out of an elevator they must be at work, right? So, and you see them talking fantasy football as they're walking. They're both in suits. So this is when you discover they're both lawyers, but they're actually in a case against one another. Kevin's
So
representing the
Ruxin-
state.
Yeah, Ruxin makes sense. He's a slimy criminal defense lawyer,
Yeah.
and Kevin is a district attorney. So even
Right.
in their work positions, they're on complete opposite sides fighting each
Yeah.
other.
So you have Ruxin, who's representing Mr. Gomez, Ernesto Gomez, or Ernie, who I guess robbed like 3 liquor stores. And there's hard evidence that he did it. I guess he waved to the camera and said like, "Hi, Mom," like in the midst of like robbing like the 3rd store. And he's supposed to be getting about 10 years in jail for this. So Kevin proposes to Ruxin because he knows he's going to win this case. If you switch first round picks with me, because Ruxin had won the first round pick in the potato sack race, he will drop the sentence from 10 years to 7. Ruxin then says that for the first round pick, he should be able to walk out the door today, go on a crime spree that would make Robert Blake cum his pants,
Favorite
have
line
sex
of the
with your
episode.
wife, and then be given a parade in his honor. That is what a first overall first round pick is worth to Ruxin.
And you guys, everyone knows who Robert Blake is, right? And what this
Yes.
right around this time, what happened?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure because that's like a
No,
weird
refresh
contextual
my
thing.
memory.
No,
I was gonna say
I don't.
recap it because you got a lot of silence. Just recap the situation.
Oh yeah, just know. So Robert
briefly.
Blake was a big actor. He was on The Little Rascals. He was Electric Light and Blue was a big movie he was in, but he was mainly known for the TV show Beretta, where he was a cop, right?
Really, because I feel like every time they referenced the Robert Blake situation, I felt like it was always the Little Rascals that got mentioned.
I always thought more. I'd usually hear Beretta. And
Wait, so what did he do?
So he killed his girlfriend in a restaurant and basically came back and was like, "No, I didn't. Somebody came in and did it. I went out to get my keys at the car." It was like a whole big thing. So he got convicted and like went to jail. And it was basically like this huge whole thing where it was like, oh, actor tries to kill his like young girlfriend or whatever. So this happened just around this time, and it was like every SNL joke, everything was about this actor who killed his wife, which is kind of
And
a
he
dark,
was,
weird
he
thing.
was pretty old.
And he was pretty old, yeah, and he's like a interesting guy. I mean, he's a great actor. No, he's great in. He's great as the he's like the sleazy head of the transit authority in the movie Money Train, which that might mean nothing
Nice.
to anybody, but to the 1%
I
of
love
people
that
out there who
movie.
love Money Train, Ferg, you're right there
I have
with
it on
me.
DVD.
So do I. Great movie. We were talking about DVDs the other day. How many DVDs do you watch? I've definitely put Money Train on way too many times in the past couple years.
The amount of time you watch television amazes me, considering how much I know you work. So you either are working or watching TV.
Wait, he never even went to jail for that?
Yeah, he got let go of. They
He
didn't-
quitted.
Yeah, because
What
one
happened
of the
was
big
his
jokes
lawyer
was
traded his first round pick, so he got out.
one of the big jokes was like the Mr. Barretto, we salute you. That was like one of the big SNL jokes. So yeah, I think he got off on it, and then I think he ended up going to jail for something else, and there was like a civil suit and all that stuff. But it was like a huge deal at the time. But he was like a little old man. He wasn't like a young spry Hollywood actor anymore. I mean, he was a goddamn little rascal. That shit was like 100 years ago.
During this negotiation period between Kevin and Ruxin, Ernesto's getting very nervous because I think at this point too, it's very obvious that like jail is going to happen no matter what, right? It's just a matter of how much jail.
And his fate is between these two guys arguing over something.
So
that has
he's trying to
nothing do with
stop
him.
them. And this is when you see they are both like, no, this is how we're going to figure this out. It's going to be through this negotiation process. And I think eventually they settle on 5 years for first round picks getting swapped, which
Yep, he's like, what just happened? You're going to jail for 5 years.
Yeah,
He's
going
so
to-
matter of fact
and,
about
and,
it.
and just to cut back into actual fantasy football a little bit, if I was in a league and I found out that 2 people made a deal involving this, and this has happened before, that involve things that don't affect the league, all hell breaks loose. You cannot, like, just so you know, in fantasy, like, that is not allowed. Like, the deal has to be even to not be lopsided and give someone an advantage in the league. If anyone, like, if I was to be like, Joe, if you give me this player of yours, I'll give you these DVDs of mine that, like, I know you want, and so you don't have to buy them. You know, that's not an okay deal. You can't mix outside and inside the league. Some people do, but in ours at least, it's not an okay thing to do. And I'm just thinking, like, this league, if they found out that Ruxin just gave Kevin his first overall first round pick for no compensation on the back end as far as like the league itself goes, chaos would ensue.
I feel like Pete would have flipped out from what we
Right.
know about his character. I think the others are too dumb to realize that. Like,
I stole a
it's
Kit
big
Kat
deal.
bar last week.
He's
And
this is
I-
the
and it-
best monologue, yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want to get into some of that stuff.
Let's just keep it small. That's the best line about it. When he's like explaining, he's like, "Why did you go to the third liquor store? Keep it small."
I feel like what we know about Ruxin, though, I feel like he wouldn't have taken that deal. I feel like the number 1 pick would have been more important to him.
That was
It
my
was,
problem
but I
with it
think
too,
like
actually,
you
yeah.
also
Yeah,
like
me
have to
too.
look at your work and like your win-loss record when you're a lawyer, like counts for stuff. So
That's what I'm saying, though, is That would be more important to him than that because it matters that much to him.
Well, I think settling out of court probably does not disclose the specifics. So as long as it looks like they settled, it doesn't look like you won or lost anything. So that's like a worthwhile position for him to be in. But I do like that he was just very honest. Like when Kevin left the room and he's talking to Ernesto, he's not like, playing dumb like as the lawyer. He's like, I know you did it. Like, and
It makes
you
me even
messed this
better
up.
as a sleazy criminal defense attorney where he's like, my job is to defend somebody who's clearly guilty and to try to get them the least amount of punishment for being guilty.
You know, it reminds me of that scene in Role Models when the guy's stealing the TVs and he's like, look at me, stealing TVs. And he's right on camera. Can't remember his name. It's the first thing I thought of when they said they caught him on camera and like he was waving to the camera and stuff.
When this concludes, we find out later that night, Ruxin goes to visit the Oracle at home, and his dad, who's played by the actor Matt Walsh, who's also been in just a ton of shit.
Also in Role Models.
He works like nonstop. I don't know how that guy, like you made a joke about how like you don't know what I'm working or watching TV. That dude is only working. I don't imagine he even sleeps at this point.
I point out that I don't feel at any point in this episode he gets quite mad enough at Ruxin.
No.
Yeah.
We'll
I know
get to
it's for
that
the
point
jokes,
later with the
but,
last scene of the Oracle, but like, I mean, Ferg, especially you with having a son, I imagine that would be just like a straight murder scenario. It wouldn't be like a we're leaving.
That first like part when he first meets him and like he came to meet his son at night. It's like fuck off. He should be getting like really upset.
And not for nothing, like
I'm annoyed. Get out of here. Like,
your son is about the same age as the Oracle, correct?
Yeah.
So just imagine the thought of a grown man, or I would assume that those guys at that point in 2009 are about our age now, right?
I think so. That seems to track, yeah.
Yeah, so think about someone our age knocking on your door like tonight to speak with your son in his room. But yeah, so he's going to talk to, he wants to talk to the Oracle.
Sword.
So his father answers the door. He's not pleased about this at all. And I don't think, does he let him in? I don't believe so, right? It kind of cuts
no, he
right
doesn't.
after that.
No. And he's like, oh, I'll hit him up on Facebook. And he's like, no, you will not.
Yeah, he shuts the door on him. So he has to pick him up later on.
So the next scene, I was a little confused by. Kevin shows up at Pete's house because he left the Shiva there and he's going to return it. Because I think it's the assumption of bad luck having the trophy that you didn't earn in your house, right? I'm assuming it's something like that.
I think so, yeah.
But this is when Pete's like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to play this year. Like, I just don't have the time. And I didn't really see what the angle was at this point.
It was because Pete had to settle down. That's why he didn't want to have the baby with Megan. But now he's kind of trapped because he found out they're trying for a kid again. And after he said no several times, now she's like, they're having their second fucking kid. Like,
right, but why
we
does
need
this
to move forward?
Why do you have to abruptly quit the league to be able to do this? Like,
his wife is telling him he has to quit the league
because he's too involved in it. It's not like I can see it in the first scene.
Yeah,
like this takes
he doesn't
over
go to
his
work
life.
for
If
it.
he was just a normal dude,
yeah, but
and just did
I
his
would
thing
imagine
and
you would say, like, you know what, settle down a little bit with the league, because like if you're going to compare yourself to Kevin and Jenny's life, like Kevin is still very much involved in the league. So
I think everything
compare.
in this show though is extremes, right? It's extremes, and she's not saying he's doing the league to the extreme, and she hates it to the extreme. So the extreme answer is to he can't do it anymore, and Kevin won't handle that. So his extreme is to bring it to his house.
Is he the one where his wife is helping him with the team?
Kevin,
That's
yeah,
Kevin.
his wife is helping him with.
So
the
this
team.
is what
She's,
I'm
like,
saying.
involved.
They're like in on it together.
Right, her
And-
attitude towards fantasy football is a lot different than Megan's is. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I'm saying if Megan is using Kevin and Jenny as a standard to compare to with like, well, I want a child, they have a child, they're having another child. If you're going to use them as your comparison piece, couldn't then Pete be like, well, Kevin's also part of the league and Jenny supports that and even helps him. Like, you don't support me with that
Kevin's
stuff.
not skipping work to do league stuff like
That's
he
true.
did at the beginning. It's the whole thing of you have to grow up and commit to the thing. And
I
we're in a
believe
relationship. We need to get to the next step. And then, like, the logical thing is he's actually doing the right thing, but this show's not about doing the right thing.
right. And do we ever even establish what Pete does for work at this point?
Not in this episode.
I forget.
We know we have 2 lawyers, we have a doctor, we have a taco, but we don't really know what Pete's
they do
role
later
in
on.
I don't
society.
think they
Not in
say
this
it in this
episode.
episode. Yeah, I don't think they say it.
I don't remember.
So basically,
period, so.
And that scene pretty much ends off with Kevin leaving the trophy in the middle of the street. Like, I'm not taking this back home. And he's like, fine, leave it there. Like, I'm not grabbing it. And there was like a weird little spotlight on it at one point too, right before the scene cuts away. Like, there's this one light like shining right over it. But that was the end of that scene. Kind of this quick little thing. And then the next scene is the draft. Like, we're having the draft party at Andre's house. He has
You
an
see Andre's
amazing
crazy loft.
Yeah, he has this amazing place. He hired like these beautiful girls to be like the bartenders and servers for the evening. And Pete isn't there, to go back to the scene before that. So he has held up. He's not showing up at the draft. And now he's talking about his house, and he has this like 65-inch LED, which honestly for 2009 is pretty impressive because
Yeah, that is. The whole house is in. I wasn't expecting that out of this character.
Yeah, because it's 2021 now, and like 65 is still a pretty decent TV to have in your living room. Like,
Yeah, in 2021, I got a 75-inch TV. It's only 10 inches bigger. And how many years ago was it? I'm sorry.
2009.
Yeah.
So you're talking 12 years ago.
I mean, that's crazy. That probably set him back like then. Like,
Oh, at that point too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's when TVs were expensive. Now
A
they're
65-inch
cheap,
TV was really expensive 5 years ago, let alone 12 years ago. And for
I
it to
don't
be
think my
LED,
living room TV is 65 inches. It's also old and weighs about 400 pounds, so I think maybe that's an issue.
Is it a
Do
big
you have a
box
CRT?
one?
No, it's not a CRT. It's probably like second generation of it's post plasma, but like when the flat screens became bigger, but they're still heavy,
Yeah. I know
Whereas like
exactly.
my bedroom TV is like a new TV. It weighs like as much as my computer, and it's huge. But
You can pick
the
it up
one in
with
our
one
living room,
fucking
Yeah.
hand. These new TVs, it's awesome.
yeah, they weigh nothing now. Whereas like how many people just took giant chunks of drywall out by trying to hang their TVs on their wall, not
way
putting
too
on
heavy,
a stud, and just rid of the TV and the walls. Yeah.
I think hanging up flat screen TVs is when people actually started taking seriously where studs are in the wall and like the importance of
Yeah.
following it. Yeah.
Because it's not a framed picture, right? It's not like a low
Right.
stakes thing that's gonna pull half your
Yeah,
wall down.
if
and
that
ruin
falls,
your
it's not a huge
$1,000
deal.
purchase.
What I also like about this scene is Andre's like desperately trying to make a toast. He's very proud of this party that he curated for the draft, and all his friends are here. And as he keeps trying to toast, everyone just keeps taking sips before he can finish, or they'll say cheers to one another as he's
That was
just
super
desperately
funny,
trying to
yeah.
finish.
That was.
And I noticed there were points where it cut, and it looked like they were all legitimately laughing at points. They looked like genuine
Yeah.
smiles as they were filming that scene.
I love that too. It's like when people crack up on an SNL sketch, it's always funnier because
Yeah.
everybody who's doing it's also enjoying the moment. It's not just some like
Yeah.
sort of sterile acting technique. Like I love. There's a scene where Kevin's talking. He's just holding the beer bottle right to his lips, being like, "I'm not drinking it. I'm not drinking it," which is such a little kid shithead thing to do, and it's so funny.
And once we get through that, they discover Andre framed his first joint that he ever shared with them. And
the
they're
funniest
laughing.
part of the whole fucking.
Yeah, I knew
of
this
the
would be a
whole
Gordo
scene, of the
scene.
whole- yeah.
Go ahead, Gordo. Explain the scene.
Yeah, this is all you, bud.
All me?
Go ahead.
Oh, no.
Explain the scene.
This is your
Oh,
favorite part.
so-
Let's see what happens.
Oh, so he looks at his he's got a joint like in like a shadow box frame, and he's really
Shadow
proud.
box.
It's like a shadow box, and they're like,
It
"Is
is,
that
yeah.
art?" And he's like, "No, this is the first joint." And they go, "Well, that was my pubes." I think it's Kevin who said it, and he goes, "Yeah, that was my pubes, right?" And he was like, "No." And they're like,
but
"Yeah,
I got
man.
so high.
Yeah, how did I get so high?" And they're like, "I don't know." But like it was right at the bottom of the shaft, and yeah, funniest fucking thing.
And Taco takes note to this conversation. He's very intrigued.
Yeah, at one point he
Yeah,
gets really
he's
serious. He
really
goes,
high
"Wait,
on
wait,
these."
no, did it really get you high?"
Yeah.
And he just takes net note.
Yeah.
I love. It's not even a joke, but I love Ruxin's delivery when they're like, "Did you tell him?" He goes, "No, how do you tell him something like that?" It's just,
It's a good point.
it's just like him being really serious, but it was funny the way he delivered it.
From there, we cut to Pete, who's not at the draft, and you see him getting ready for some sort of an event where he's, getting dressed pretty nicely. He's asking Megan, like, what's this event that we're even going to? And it's called Down Doggy, which is for dogs with Down syndrome. And I had to, out of curiosity, give it a quick Google. Dogs cannot get Down syndrome.
I assumed, but I'm glad you did the.
Well, I don't
I
know, 'cause
love-
there's a lot of times where, like, nowadays, like, you'll find out, like, dogs get all these diseases and conditions that, like, are like to things we have. So I'm like, well, I guess it's possible that they can get Down syndrome.
I know dogs that are on Prozac and stuff. Yeah, like you can do all sorts of crazy stuff.
But this
now.
is like a chromosome thing. They just don't have the same DNA as we
Yeah,
do.
it's
But,
a
like,
different. Yeah, they're not human beings.
I love how the sincerity in the "how do they even know" question was like, it would be the first thing I would ask too. How do you even know a dog has Down syndrome? Because they're dogs.
And she's so mad
I
that he
didn't
even
even think of
questioned
that
it.
until you
Yeah.
just said it now, and I almost spit my drink out. I was like, yeah, how would you test for it?
Yeah.
How would you test a dog for that? What is happening?
And she just looks at him very matter of fact and she's like, it's an epidemic.
Such good back and forth.
Yeah. And also she thinks it's just like the event in itself is good for networking. It's a good opportunity for him to meet people and get his name out there for whatever occupation
So
he
this
has.
is where I think that he was unemployed. This is where I got the vibe.
Oh, maybe.
that
Maybe he was, yeah.
unemployed.
Oh,
So
good
he's
call,
looking to
yeah,
go to an
because-
event and network and try and get a job, and that's why she's so mad that
They never do
he's-
talk about what he does in this episode, right?
Not in this
No.
episode.
No,
yeah,
they
so
don't.
Maybe he's not working, Gordo. That's a good call.
So maybe early on in the first scene, she's mad because he's not looking for
Looking for a
work.
job.
He's doing
Yeah,
he's slacking
fantasy
around.
football stuff. That's possible.
Yeah, that's what this kind of got the wheels in motion for me.
I think you may have cracked that code there, Gordo.
Very possible. And we also get at this point, we get the doorbell ringing, and they must have a maid, right? or a housekeeper or something. She's showing up and she's wearing his draft shirt that he had asked her about earlier in the episode, which just reads, I shaved my balls for this. And
I have a lot of
he's
issue
like-
with this scene.
He's like, where'd you get this? And it's like, oh, Megan gave it to me or
Oh,
whatever.
is it the
So
size of the shirt? Is that your issue?
It's the size of the shirt and the fact
The
that
print.
the shirt Teresa is wearing is very it's distressed, right? Like an old shirt.
exactly. I noticed the
I
same
agree.
thing.
I
'Cause
An
then
old
agree.
shirt. It's all
There's a
cracked up.
point
When
we'll get-
Pete shows
yeah.
up wearing it later on. It's like a
Yep.
brand new screen shirt.
I noticed the same exact thing when I watched
I'm glad it wasn't just me. That drove me insane.
No, I noticed it right away when he showed up, and I'm like, first I noticed the size, then I noticed like how much cleaner it was. And
Yeah, it was drastically different.
That was some set design problems right there.
It was
It's
an
not the
oversight
system
for
for
sure.
traveling pants here. It's not gonna just fit everybody and look the
just
same.
have him wear a bigger shirt or hire a skinnier maid. Like,
Or I don't
Not
even
that
care about the
hard.
size. Honestly, I care about the fact that
It
one
just
was
looks
distressed,
so
one wasn't.
like the
One looked
aesthetics
brand
look so
new.
different.
Keep the distressed logo. That's all you have to do.
And then so we get back to the draft and Kevin's stalling because I think obviously I think when you look at this whole group, Pete and Kevin are probably the closest friends, right? Out of that whole team, it seems like those two are best friends. So he's really stalling because he doesn't want his best friend not in the league with him anymore. Like this is like a really important thing to all of them. And so he's stalling and stalling and stalling. They kind of know what's going on. But Pete does finally show up wearing the shirt. And as Joe said, it was a much newer shirt when you see him show up in it. So an oversight there for sure. But he has the Shiva with him, which is a little beat up. So I guess he did leave it outside and a car probably hit it at some point.
I think he makes a joke about the garbage truck, so I imagine he had to maybe wrestle it from the garbage man.
I think he says the garbage truck backed into it. It's something like that. He says something backed into it.
Is this also where we established that whomever the doctor is hired
Andre?
people? Yeah, Andre, that he hired people to be a party.
I don't
Yeah.
know if that was
I think-
established. They asked him about it, but he just
yeah,
said
and
it's
he
a
said
party
that he
and-
hired them. He said that
He
he
hired
hired
the-
them.
Oh, he hired the
staff.
bartenders.
He hired
he
the
hired the
bartenders.
girls.
I thought that he hired the people to come to the party.
See,
I don't
if
think
you
that
know
got mentioned.
Andre, it's entirely possible that he did that.
no,
but
I
don't.
thought that he
Yeah,
said
his whole
that.
character
Oh,
is.
I don't
fake it
remember
till you
it if he
make
said
it,
that.
like, but
But
I mean,
also,
it wouldn't be out of character for him. But I don't. I think those were just like people he knew. But he hired the bartender and like the staff.
No, I know that, but I thought he also said that he had hired the people to be at a party.
I don't
too.
remember that.
'Cause they-
I remember
they-
them
they
asking, but
talk
I don't
about
think
it.
that came up.
Yeah,
They
because
do talk about it.
They do, and I thought he said that he hired them. That's just me, but
We did mention it earlier, but this is when we find out officially that's an 8-person league and like 3 of them aren't even at the draft. So it's kind of weak. I don't know if it's kind of funny. This whole show is about a fantasy football
It's like
league.
a plot
where, like,
device you couldn't get around, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have an 8-person cast.
well, you could have a
and-
couple phone-in friends or at least give them
That's
Yeah,
some
what
yeah.
I
sort of
don't
a preference.
understand is it's 5 people and like the rest of the league are all like out of town, but they think so. Why make it 8? Why not just have 12 out of town people? Like,
Yeah, you could do that
well,
too.
not 12 out of town, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Have the extra equal to 12, like an average league.
Yeah, I mean, some
Yeah.
leagues are as small as 8, but again, I just think you could have maybe established some sort of a presence of those other people, even if it was just for the draft. Like, oh, like look at who flew in just for the draft. Just I don't know, try it or have someone video chat with them for a minute because I just felt like it's kind of this unspoken about thing at all times, but it is what it is.
Do you think they just assumed casual watchers like wouldn't
Yeah,
read that
I
much
guess.
into it?
And it is what it is. I guess it's something I probably didn't care about until I got into fantasy football. So maybe it's just one of those things that they assume most people won't take much note to. We see the draft board as they get going, and I got like a nice little pause screen when there were a couple rounds in, and you see a lot of these names of like all these players. And again,
were you surprised how late Marshawn Lynch went?
You know what I was surprised about is like out of this whole thing, you had it was like the first or second, I think it was like the second pick of the second round was Larry Fitzgerald, who still plays today.
I also thought it was funny that Andre was the first person to draft a quarterback, because that was like a subtle guy doesn't know what he's doing thing that they, never mentioned and only put the sticker up there, but it was funny.
It was when you look at the players that were there and in the order they were in, it was actually pretty true to form, I would say, without actually specifically looking at the standard draft lists for 2009. Like it seemed pretty accurate, which again, for me, that works. I like seeing that. And again, I thought it was, I don't know, I really like seeing Larry Fitzgerald's name there, just knowing that this was in 2009 and he's still a player who
not only is he still a player, he's still a good player.
And for the same team he was on in 2009.
Well,
he's in his final year or two for sure. But
I actually this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about having actual players is like also playing fantasy football like we do. Like I liked looking back and hearing these players that like went off those random years. Like because it was like when they said Matt Forte, I was like, oh shit. Then I took him the next year and he did shit. But
yeah, Steven Jackson was like a little bit of a flash in the pan. He was one of the early.
Who did Andre want to draft that had already?
Keyshawn Johnson.
No, Keyshawn Johnson.
Yeah.
That was later on. He goes to draft Keyshawn Johnson.
Because everyone here else, aside from me, likes football. This is the part of the show where I get lost, where I'm just like, I don't know what this means. I don't know who these people are.
Shannon Sharp. He drafted
it wasn't
the year.
Shannon Sharp because Shannon Sharp was playing at that time still. But
no, he wasn't. No, not in 2009.
I don't think so.
They were joking that he picked a commentator.
Yeah, but it wasn't Shannon Sharp. It was a different commentator.
What I like too is was it Andre who later then drafted someone from the Calgary Stampeders? No, Taco did.
From the Calgary Stampeders.
From the Calgary Stampeders, which is a legit team in the CFL. Who Flying Brian Pillman played for the Calgary Stampeders at one point.
That's true. And I think after the Bengals?
Maybe before he got to the Bengals. I'm not sure. And I know Doug Flutie had a stint there. And I want... The Rock might have also played for the Calgary Stampeders. I know when he was in the CFL, that might have been where Dwayne used to play. But yeah, go Stampeders.
Is the CFL still a thing?
Yeah, and I believe the Stampeders are still a team.
And of course, Stampede Wrestling.
Yeah, Calgary. It's all Calgary because the Calgary Stampede is a big event in Calgary.
It's a big
so that's why so many things are
Bulls and
So many things are named after that big event that happens in Calgary. Like
a lot of livestock and cowboy hats.
Yeah, there's big rodeo that happens in the middle of Canada for some reason.
Fuck else is there to do?
I've never been to Calgary. I've been to Montreal. I've been to Ottawa. I've been to the Maritimes.
I've only been to Montreal.
Never been to Montreal. Never been to Calgary though, which seems like a pretty interesting place.
I like in this scene, Ruxin pretends to be the Oracle's teacher so he can call him. And one of them yells out, like, paging to catch a predator. Like, everyone acknowledges how creepy it is that he's establishing this relationship
and also,
with a
To
young
Catch a
boy.
Predator was one of the greatest TV shows of all time.
It was so good.
Yes,
so sad that they never figured out a way to get that back on TV.
Yeah, but now fucking Hanson, the host of that, is a predator and is going to jail.
Is he a predator or did he just have a wife issue?
No, I'm pretty sure like he was like had like kitty porn too. Something like
no,
that.
There's no way. I think he just got caught in a weird thing where he was cheating on his wife.
Is his name Chris Hansen or Craig Hansen?
Chris.
I was trying to look up Andre's thing, but now I have to switch to Catch a Predator.
But yeah, so then obviously, Ruxin's up there talking to the Oracle in the bedroom.
Yeah, he eventually gets him to the party. At first he was trying to call him, now he gets him to the party with him.
And takes him upstairs in a private bedroom.
And he's wearing Ruxin gave him his Peyton Manning jersey. So now he's wearing his jersey, which is important to note for something that happens in about a minute or so. And also, quick sidebar, we find out that Pete broke up with Megan. To mention it because it's important to the episode, but, they didn't really get into it much after that. They were just heading in different directions.
But him wearing the shirt is pretty much the indication you need that this relationship's over. He chose the league and his friends over having
He had a choice. He had to go one way or the other. There was no world that he could have both, apparently. At least to Megan, that was not an option. You had to pick one or the other.
Chris Hansen was arrested for missing a court date connected to not returning materials to a defense attorney representing one of 3 people charged with attempting to sexually assault a child between the ages of 13 and 15.
Basically, what it is he didn't turn over all the footage from the sting that they were working on to catch these dudes, and they served a warrant to him to get the footage. Basically, is
Okay,
what it
perfect.
was.
So he's not a shithead. That makes me
Okay.
much happier because I love Chris Hansen. I love Titch Predator. Gordo, at your old apartment, you had all of them DVR'd the very beginning of TiVo when you lived with Russell. We'd go over there. We'd buy as many of the God, what was the big Wendy's burger at the time?
The Baconators.
The Baconator. We'd buy like 15 Baconators and drink all night and watch every To Catch a Predator over and over again. And when
Yes.
later on, I remember going through Florida on tour, driving from Route 1, you go from one end of Florida to the other, and every time we'd hit a city, I'd be like, oh, Flagler Beach, that's where To Catch a Predator happened. Just like, kept saying different cities till they're just like, please stop remembering every city they did stings in
Yeah,
the show.
To Catch a Predator. Yeah.
And on that note, this is when Ruxin has the Oracle up in the room with them. They're not in agreement because they keep trying to talk about draft strategy and they can't get on the same page. Every time Ruxin has an idea, it sounds like this kid keeps shooting it down, but doesn't seem to have a good solution of his own, at least.
That's a great draft pick 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Then he goes, I'm sorry. He apologizes to the
Yes.
child.
So then it's established that this isn't working out. So he's just going to leave. And Ruxin's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And he's like, I just gave you my Peyton Manning jersey. He's like, I want my jersey back. So now he's like, I'm not giving you the jersey. So Ruxin is trying to forcibly remove this jersey from the child.
He's
Right?
stripping a child.
He's removing clothing from this 9-year-old boy right as his father storms into the room and opens up the door and sees this happening. And like, how does a murder not happen in this moment?
Exactly. He
And
just
Or at
like,
least an
Yeah.
arrest.
pulls him out. He doesn't at
Yeah.
least punch him or like go after
Right.
him like, you son of a bitch. Like,
And his response to the dad is that the son is being a total douche. That's
Yeah.
how he tries to get out of it.
And even then, like, Ruxin's so confident. Like, he's not like, yep, this looks bad. It's more like, I'm a lawyer.
I'm
This
pretty
doesn't
sure
look
that
bad.
won't hold up in court.
Yeah, exactly. He just doubles down.
He's so slimy, it's perfect.
But he doesn't get punched. He doesn't get yelled at. He just
No, he does
fucking-
push him
takes
into
his
the
kid and
draft
leaves,
board.
like-
He pushes him, puts him into the draft board, knocks the Shiva over, kind of breaks it even more. And the closing scene is essentially Taco leaves the bathroom with this girl that he had brought in with him and asks Kevin for some of his pubes because his aren't working and she doesn't have any.
And then, like, a good way, the show ends the way I love that, like, a theme song with, like, da, 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 da. It's just a quick, simple thing. So, like, it's almost like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where you make a joke and you know the music is going to come right after it.
Yep.
Like, there's always going to be a button followed by this one melody, and then you're out.
Yeah, it's going to close on a one-liner. Like, that's how the show is meant to work. It's always going to close on that one-liner. And yeah, that's the whole episode. So we've covered all of episode 1 of The League, the draft. Anything you guys want to say about this show in general, this episode that we didn't touch on already?
I would just like to say that I hope that you're all proud of me because I did very, very well in this episode.
Much better than I thought.
Yeah,
Much better.
it was
We,
very,
You get a
very
water
hard
cookie.
for
I
me.
tried
Yeah,
to
I'm going to
bait
eat
you,
a bunch
Joe.
of water cookies when we get out of here because I could have mentioned 9/11 so many times and I just
there it
did
is.
once.
overall, he did a pretty
He
good
said,
job.
I'm proud of you, big guy.
Good job, Joe.
Thank you guys.
So let's get right into it then. Let's close it out. Let's talk about our green light or cancel segment. Right now, I'm going to go in the order I normally see you guys in on my screen. Joe, you're starting this time.
All right. So one weird thing to mention, I loved this show so much that when this first came out, right, we were still in the iPod era. They used to put out a sound clip or a song or something every week on Twitter, and you could download it as an MP3. And to this day, I still have a CD with like 50 different The League clips or songs on it, and I play it every once in a while because it just puts me in a happy place.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I can. I'll put it into the drive for you guys because there's some good stuff. In
Yeah, I
there.
wouldn't mind hearing that, honestly.
Yeah.
Pretty good, but I love this show. Obviously, the 9/11 thing, I find just that, I mean, that just was icing on the cake for me. But this episode's great. For somebody who has just hated football his entire life to love a show as much as I do about this, I think they've just found a weird way around it. So for me, it's a huge
I
green
just
light.
want to say, too, if we did do our own fantasy league just for this show, I guarantee you would change your mind on football, which you've hated your life.
We're going to find out. 'Cause we're
Ah,
gonna-
yeah. I
has
think it would.
has turned people in the past. It has turned people in the past.
It's magic.
I'm willing to try. It always feels like I miss out on I hate in the wintertime, I hate going to bars on a Sunday because you're like, I just want to have a drink and everyone's yelling about football.
Yeah, and
So
now
maybe
you would
it'll-
have, yeah.
I'd have the thing.
Yeah,
now
to
you'd
not,
have a reason to yell at the TV.
yeah, to not tangent too much in the middle of the segment, I will say, like anything else, when you have the players on your teams, it gives you reasons to watch games that aren't just your hometown team or even within your team. It gives you things to pay attention to you might normally not pay attention to in the sport because you're paying attention to individuals' performances and stuff like that, and you're tracking yards and catches and stuff. So it makes it a game. It's a game within the game that you're playing that even if you don't like the sport, you like the fact that you have a team and you need your people to perform to win. So without liking football, you can enjoy playing fantasy football for that aspect of it. But I think you gave it the green light. Did you already say that officially?
Yeah, officially greenlit.
Okay, so Ferg, on to you.
Green light. I don't have that much to say about this show. It's just really well written. I like the jokes, a little more adult jokes. Pretty funny. Our specific sense of humor, I feel. And yeah, the only thing I didn't like I said, is Taco. I can't stand his character. It gets worse with time. But yeah, Ruxin is awesome. Pete's awesome. Kevin's awesome. The wife, Megan leaves. But yeah, green light.
Gordo, on to you. And I already know what
So-
you're going to say.
I am going to cancel this as a TV show, but greenlight this as a movie. This, based on this first episode, this should not be a television show. This should be a movie, like Old School or like something else. Now, hear me out. It's too dated to be a classic television show because you're using teams in 2009, whereas I feel like the replay value would be better suited for a movie. At least you know you're going to watch a one-off kind of thing about people playing a fantasy football league in 2009, and that can translate all the way through time
Question,
if it's
though,
funny.
What's the difference if it's a movie or thing? Wouldn't it still be dated? I don't understand that concept. That's
I
all.
feel like it's in a short... how long did this go? 5 seasons?
I believe it was 6 seasons. I'd have to check.
Yeah, that's too long. I feel like if it's just a one-shot and done...
7
it
seasons.
works.
I'm sorry. 84 episodes over 7 seasons.
I think that's too long for something that is so current and so specific. That's just my opinion, that like it takes me out of it because then I have to go back to thinking about 2009. Even though I found jokes funny, I found everything funny, I think this works better as a movie. And that's what I got from the first episode. I probably will watch it again, but giving my honest opinion, I would cancel this as a TV show, greenlight it as a movie.
All right, Nick, on to you.
Yeah, no, I'm greenlighting. I am, I enjoyed sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. The characters are all different enough, but funny together that I really like the chemistry that they all have. It's tough for a group of 5 people to all be individually funny and funny together at the same time, and I think they do a good job of that. Like a couple of you have said that the writing is smart, and you're pushing the envelope as far as R-rated goes too, which I like to see people do. Especially FX is still just a TV network show. Like, so the fact that they were able to get away with most of this, I feel like Always Sunny kind of paved that way for that network. But it's nice to see that outside of the box as far as your rating goes. And greenlight, yeah, I want to see more of it.
All right, well, yeah, so for me, it's also a green light. And, you know, a lot of the stuff we've talked about earlier, I just think that in general, I love the show. And I knew that going in, and I try to ignore that and just focus on episode 1. But I think episode 1 does a great job encapsulating what the show is and will be. You get to know all the characters. It all lands with me. I don't know why you don't like Taco. I love Taco. But I really enjoy the show throughout the whole thing. I think the jokes, like what we touched on, it's a different form of humor. It's a little more adult. It's a little dirtier. And I think it parallels our humor a little bit more than what we normally see represented on television. So it's kind of nice to have those jokes on a show, and you kind of feel like you have a show that's a little bit more aimed to your audience than what you normally get. So yeah, again, this was the show that made me start playing fantasy football. So yeah, green light for me. So that's 4 out of 5. I feel like we've had a lot of 4 out of 5s lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
it's
it.
because of Gordo.
It has been lately. So congratulations to the league. You live on to see another day. You get your episode 2. For those of you who want to watch the league, you can find all of that on Hulu presently, at the time of this recording at least. So go to Hulu if you want to watch the league. All seasons are available for streaming there. So yeah, guys, that's it. That's all the time we have for this week. I'd like to remind you once again, for all information in regards to us, go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find everywhere where you can follow us on social media, everywhere to listen to us. Any link in relation to us is available on that website. Please make sure that you rate, review, subscribe, do all that fun stuff on iTunes or wherever you listen to us. That does a lot to help us out with the algorithms. We appreciate all the feedback that we get from you guys, so keep it coming. Hit us up. Let us know what you like or don't like. We take all of that to heart. That's it. That's all the time we have for today. Good night.
Jet fuel doesn't melt. Steve, ran is easy.